to you. Today is Thursday, the 26th of March, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. Yesterday was all about controls and resilience, and today the board, executive team, and the founders has to face something even more uncomfortable, I have to say. So the systems that help you and your organization become reliable can also make you slow. And this is reality. So the brand that help you become known can also trap you in a yesterday story. And this is all about relevance, how you create an edge for the next year, the next 5 years, etc., etc. So the processes that once reduce risk can also stop you responding when the market shifts, right? Because actually you start to get bigger, more stronger, and then you have to protect your organization. But at the same time, if you don't watch this very carefully, it's a handbrake to what is going to happen in the coming years. So let me bring this model to the screen so we can see what I'm talking about. So this is a full advisory board operating system. On Monday, we talk about scaling. Tuesday, we talk about predictability. Yesterday, we talk about systems. And today is a very fascinating topic that where even if you are a large organization, you act like a startup, which is quite exciting, isn't it? Because as you say, freaking hell, we have to do all over again. Yes, you have to. But you have the resources or the capacity or at least the knowledge how to do it. And even if your organization is not that big and it seems that everything is overwhelming, at least you have the knowledge, the capacity, and the resources, or where to tap into resources to get what is your next edge, how you transform your business, how you reinvent your organization through your brand, your strategies, and your performances. Okay, so let's focus on this. I'm going to pull only the part that is interest today, which is this section. So we have this in mind all the time. Okay, let's go to our topic today. And this is where I come in as a board advisor. I build a rotation international advisory board around the live milestones that your organization has. Particularly, this milestone is edge, how you transform, how you innovate. So the board gets, and the board's executive teams, or you as a founder, get the right mix of transformation, operating models, innovation, and market positioning, and the expertise faster than hiring one executive, right? Without a consulting overhead or getting stuck with a capability that no longer fits the business or the model or the projects 6 months later down the line. So 3 problems that we're going to look into this today. And number one is this is the advantage paradox of legacy, right? So it sounds a contradiction, but actually you have a legacy, and this is the advantage paradox. So yesterday, we spoke about systems that becomes today's bottlenecks, and the ecosystem losses is premium valuation, because actually it acts like a handbrake, as I mentioned. That is when the transformation fails. It lacks a pioneering vision and a formal program structure, whether or not a board or a team or the founders agrees with every number in that framing. The governing warning is a stopper, right? So you have there the capacity to govern a very, 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 very tight boat, as I say, or tight ship, but at the same time it's so tight that actually you start to lose sight of the things that are going around you. So the change without a structure usually burns money, because you have to start to do things the last minute to catch up, rather than to have a thorough program through the time and with a few years ahead in sight. Now, let's review another 2 problems that actually are coming from statistics. And why I love these statistics, because you don't have to do all this extensive and expensive market research. There are many already done based on business. And here's a little trick. They are coming from the Financial Reporting Council. So they have to provide at least a very good information if they don't want to get in trouble. So Here's one from the Financial Reporting Council, and that is clear, and that effective boards, executive teams, and founders should understand the main trends affecting long-term sustainability success and future prospects. For example, the technological change, or economical, or social, and explain how these have been assessed in strategy and the business model. So the transformation is not a management side project. It is a board and the executive team and the founder's responsibility. And here's the point. This responsibility is why, and this is part coming from the Financial Council, by the way, why this responsibility is coming from, because you have to be relevant to what's going on, right? So you have to explain how these have been assessed in the strategy and the business model. And this is coming for the long-term sustainable success of the future prospects. Anyway, another thing that I want to highlight to you is the use of the new technology. I think that is more relevant, and we say, okay, fine, this is all theoretical, it's a good guideline. So, but I'm going to tap today into some of the technology changes that are happening as an example, so you can have a view of what's going on. This is a problem that I identified, but not me, but it's the Department of Science, Innovation, and Technology. So in this market context, it's moving faster than many operating models that can keep pace, right? This is AI. Now, they did an adoption review, and they say that the UK still face barriers. And my guess is that actually these barriers are not proprietary of the UK. Every country and every organization will have something of this anyways, because actually is what they took the time to do the surveys and do the adoption reviews and document them. And I'm sure that many countries have done the same thing, so you can tap it into that departments of science and innovations in your own country and your geographies, because you're going to find something interesting. And this is interesting thing in terms of the future. What are the barriers of adoption of transformative digital technologies? This is also coming from the Office of National Statistics, that 25% of businesses were using some form of AI as last 25 December, 2025. But here's the interesting thing. 40% of the businesses with 200 employees or more already are doing so. But my guess is even the solopreneurs are doing this all the time, probably more than the large organizations. Why? Because they don't need the amount of people for graphic design, infographics, drafting web pages, scripts for videos, or for people are writing books. I know a person, and I can assure you, this person wrote 4 books in 3 months. And you have to see the quality of these books, because obviously this is not something actually he wrote the books and dump AI jargon in there. He put his ideas onto the AI. The AI started to structure the whole book, start to do the writing, fill the gaps, went to the reviewer came back, somebody reviewed again, edited, etc., etc. And in 3 months, he wrote 4 books. Ideas that he has in his mind for years, all of a sudden are 4 books that are available in Amazon. You see how one person that before will take years perhaps to write 1 book now can do, if you have obviously the good ideas, and this is part of the things that we're going to discuss today. If you have the good ideas, then with the AI, you can have a better traction and business outcomes. In other words, I imagine this. A lot of companies treat transformations like renovating the front room. Oh, yes, we have AI. But the market is judging the wiring, not only the painting, right? So what I mean with this, actually, you've seen these horror stories of companies or judges that they pass judgment based on AI and cases that doesn't exist. So you have to be careful how you use the technology. So, but this is a better question to consider today. If the danger is not the change itself, but the unmanaged change, and this particular example, that's why I'm using AI today, what does the board or the executive team and the founders need to redesign to turn transformation into a control source of advantage, right? You want a control source of advantage. What you need to redesign today. And this reminds me in the 90s and early 2000s when ERP systems, which is enterprise resource and planning systems, were bought right, center, and left by almost any organization in the world. You know what happened with the big majority of these projects? 89% failed. Why? And they paid, some of these companies paid millions of dollars, euros, and pounds for these systems. You know why they failed? Because actually a system is pretty much this: garbage in, garbage out. So if your workflows, your operating systems, your systems in terms of actually processes and activities are not well documented and well designed before putting into a software, the software, the only thing that it does is amplify the mess. It doesn't fix it for you. You have to have the elements and the processes to have very good system, very good thought systems that actually help you not only to have a very good foundation, also to have the capacity to scale that, right? So back to the point of innovation. As an advisory board, what I would propose to consider is the following. Number one, through the asset lens. And remember, I always talk about assets because you have to protect your intellectual property, your systems, your workflows as intellectual property of organization. That gives you transferability of your company, which increases the value of your company too, by multiples, not just by 1 point or 2 points, by multiple points. So we look into our model that you have in front of you now to performance, strategy, and brand. In terms of performance, ask whether the operating backbone can support future businesses, not just the current business, the future businesses in terms of performances, right? So if your organization prepared to future business too, not just to the things that are operating today. Sorry. In terms of strategy, ask whether the board, the executive team, or yourself as as a founder, have a live innovation pipeline with a clear kill or invest logic. Because sometimes throwing money to a project, it doesn't mean that you are investing logically. It's probably a reaction, not a response. And number three, in terms of branding, ask whether the market story reflects future relevance rather than inherited reputation. Sometimes you carry a very good reputation and you think that it's going to make it for the rest of the century, and it collapses because the behaviors or the relevance of your brand and your reputation is not there anymore. What I mean with this is that the audience or your customers or your consumers are not there anymore. They move to somewhere else. So if you are relying exclusively on in your inherited reputation, be careful, because sometimes this is not a good idea, particularly at the speed that the things are changing today. So most of these three are linked, and they are linked together, and you have to do it very explicitly. Now, I give you a few stats that actually are quite interesting, because this is related to AI, and probably some of them resonate with you, and so some of them are not, but are highly relevant to in terms of innovation and how adoption of the things are happening in the organizations. And guess what? In your customers too. So you can translate this information to what your customers are thinking, or your partnerships, or your joint ventures, etc. Now, the Department of Science, I mentioned, they did an adoption survey, and they had some interesting stats. So more than half of the businesses, 56%, they say, they were adopters of at least one technology in scope, meaning things like AI, in other words. So, but 85% of them, the adoption journeys require non-financial external support. Why? Because the people were interested in doing it themselves. But 73% of those really needed financial support, right? So acquiring the licenses, implementation, etc., etc. So, but the adoption, these two things, one is acquisition of the technology, the other thing is the adoption. So it was a very high adoption and also a very high cost of acquiring these. And also supporting, meaning that managed services, implementation, programming, etc., etc., or just pretty much putting new activities into the processes. But 25% of the businesses faced acquisition or integration costs were above 10% of the annual turnover. Meaning, if you have a business that is revenue is 1 million, you put, or 25% of the businesses invested around 100K or more to implement these new things. This is a massive red flag, because if 25% of the businesses implement 10% of the annual turnover in acquisition or integration costs, that is way above a well-structured program or strategy. It sounds to me a compulsive buy based by who knows what. So this is why boards, executive teams, and founders need the discipline. It's a sequencing and a sponsorship rather than a loose collection of pilots that goes nowhere. And here's another statistic that is very important to consider. Gartner already studied this adoption of AI and understands, and they produced a report last month, and they say that 40% of the global projects of AI are going to fail by next year. So you start to see now that actually this flashy thing that happened 2 years ago now start to come to a reality and say, hold on a second, what are we doing? Because actually we are spending more money in the things that we thought that would be absolutely fantastic, but actually it's not really working. Now, I give you another stats if you want, also from the Innovation and Technology AI Adoption Research. So among the businesses that they surveyed, there are barriers too. And which are the barriers? 71% lack of identified use for AI. And this is supporting Gartner's research. So 71% of the businesses that they spend 10% of the annual revenue of those businesses that spend that, or the annual turnaround, now they start to say, why we implemented this? We don't know really, because it's not producing the results that we thought they would produce. 60% of the same business say they have limited AI skills. So even if the adoption was high, remember 85% adoption, 60% of people's skills they were like, yeah, we like it, we love it, yeah, we are all into AI, but we don't have the skills to manage this. So it's like a fancy things to do. Anyway, so then we have all the stats, but I don't want to mention all of them because it's quite interesting how you innovate in this kind of environment. Why I'm saying this? Because actually these innovations are from the point of view of your organization as a consumer, right? So now you have to think how your company is going to innovate towards your customers, your suppliers, your consumers, right? It's about relevancy, how relevant the things are in your own organization towards the things that you are doing today. And we mentioned about legacy too. So the problem is not simply a reluctance to do new things. There is uncertainty around the use case, the capability, the governance, and the returns that's getting to you. And this is something interesting that happened 2 weeks ago. And a very, very well-known organization, we were having a chat with the directors, not executive directors, people in their 60s and 70s, very skilled, very experienced, very, very business savvy. And actually, they were studying a marketing study in terms of the next 5 years where the consumers were about to go. And then I ask you these questions, say what your mid-management are saying, because actually your consumers are in the age range of 35, 40 years old now. Their children are going to be your consumers in 5 years' time, because they are going to university now, they are about to go to university, or they are out of university. So how you're going to capture the interest of these people? Guess what? They never thought that their own organization will have valuable information. We asked 3 managers in the board at that time, and none of their children were buying their products. The products where the parents were working. Why? Because the attention, the relevancy, the product, the interest were somewhere else, because this company was not providing that, were considered or tagged as a old old products, old fashion, etc., etc. So they were not interested. So I say, oh, probably you have a massive gap in revenue in 5 years' time, because actually you don't have in the next generation of buyers or consumers or loyal customers waiting for the next line of products that you're going to produce. You see how dangerous it is just to trust the things actually are just because they are happening, or they happened 3 5 years ago, but today they are changing so fast that you have to move with the times. Now, all this sounds very reasonable, but boards, executive teams, and founders do not need another innovation lecture. I'm not lecturing anybody here. I'm just showing things that actually probably interesting to you to say, oof, we need to think this in a different way. So what these boards, executive teams, and founders need to a way to install the right capabilities now, not in next year, 2 years time, now, and with enough authority to move and enough flexibility to change the course when the evidence changes, right? So what I'm trying to say with this is, or what I'm saying with this is, the things evolve pretty much every 6 months now. So the consumers that were before went to the shops to buy clothes, now they go into a web page and they bring it from China in a day at $1 per shipping. So no wonder that many shops in the main street are closing, particularly clothing, because the things change. So do I have the capacity to go online to Instagram to promote my products, to invite people to ship it from my own shop? Yes, you have. Are you doing it? Sorry, the example is very, very simple, but actually it's a reality, because I know a lady, happened to be my neighbor, that she's doing exactly that. Her main street shop is declining. So she went out and started to do and modeling herself in Instagram. And guess what? Now he has a more efficient system, increase the sales. She's only do a live session every week to show the new batch of things are coming into her shop. He opened the doors less now because cheap more online, but she reinvented her models to how the behavior of the consumers are changing. So it's not lecturing, just showing examples. So what does the reality look like, and what do you gain working with me? So it's three things: outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. In terms of outcomes, I built a rotation international advisory board around these transformation and reinvention milestones, so bringing together the exact capability mix needed across operating models, redesign, strategy, innovation governance, and brand repositioning and investor narrative. Because at the end, all these things, you have your investor, your stockholders, your financiers, and all they need a narrative to support these changes and this unknown, this uncertainty, what's going to happen. So you have to give a very good, solid story why you're doing the things that you're doing and how you're going to repay them in terms of dividends or repayment of the loans. So that gets the board from reactive transformation to a formal value engine faster than a single hire approach. In terms of differentiator, I do not treat transformation as a theater. I install the board operating rhythm. So that means an operating model, a gap audit, the kill or invest logic is a logic. It's not just a, oh, we'll try this. No, it's a logic. It has a reason to be that test and this form of innovation pipeline, a sandbox for unproven bets, a refreshed inventory story, and a direct link between each innovation choice and the shareholder value driver. So our valuation logic supports that sequence because investor reward reduce uncertainty and stronger evidence, and all the times evidence, evidence, evidence. Now, in terms of how I help you to reduce risk, the change of advisors is modular. So members are swapped every 6 months as the project evolves. So the board gets the right specialist for the phase and doesn't not carry stall capability into the next one. Meaning that actually, if you are moving into stages, probably we don't need this specialist for this particular area. So 6 months later, we change it for another specialist for the next phase of the project. So that cuts talent lock-in, avoids consulting overhead, and gives the company specialist execution capacity match to the real bottlenecks in front of it. Right. One action you can take today and is doable in 30 minutes or less. Ask your executive team for every active transformation initiative, and then mark each one as a keep, is a kill, or is approved. And base that on whether it has a named owner, a measurable value thesis, a measurable value thesis, not just something like it's a measurable value thesis and a clear decision date. So let's pause here today and reconvene tomorrow, because tomorrow I will put the whole model together step by step. Once you can see how to scale, predictability, resilience, and reinvention are all connected, so the board can stop treating them as a separate problem and start running them as one operating system. And if you want to implement something like this, set up a 30-minute call so I can understand your position and how I can help you and your teams build a rotating international advisory board around your transformation reinvention, all the milestones that you have, so you get the right expertise faster than hiring one executive, without consulting overhead, without talent locked in, and with the flexibility to refresh the bench every 6 months as the work changes. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, and bye-bye.